Hello again, this is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today I want to talk a little bit about some recent changes to the speaking and writing sections of the TOEFL. Now, if you're a subscriber to the channel, you probably know that I put out a video on the same topic back in December of last year, and yeah, I'm going to repeat a few things in this video. However, there's a couple elements of that video that weren't totally clear, and there's a couple of new things I want to mention, so here is one more video on the same topic. Now, first of all, let's start talking about the speaking section of the test. The biggest change you're going to see this year is that the multiple choice independent speaking questions are getting longer and they're a little bit more confusing. So what do I mean by that? Well, you're getting longer options to choose from. So here's a sample question. It's the same topic as before. It's the same style and the same theme, but you can see that the two options there are much longer. They're, in fact, entire sentences, and they're fairly long sentences. That's a change. In the past, the options given would be fairly short. They'd be a couple words, sometimes even one word. At the very longest, you'd get a sentence fragment. But here, you've got two very long sentences to choose from. Now, you're answering this question exactly as before. Nothing changes in the way you answer the question. And if you want, I'll put a link in the video description to my guide for this question type. But I don't want you to be confused and scared when you get really long options to choose from. That's a change. Here's another one. You're getting a 3 choices question here. And they're all really long choices. Again, it's a similar topic as before, right? It's asking you to imagine that you begin studying at a new university and you want to learn about the campus. So that's a very standard TOEFL Type 1 topic. They love to ask you about universities. But in the past, the answer choices would be quite short. And in fact, if you look at the official guide to the TOEFL, the sample questions are still pretty short. But on the real test these days, you're going to get longer choices. Otherwise, it is exactly the same. Now, I want to give you a note about the advantages, disadvantages style of questions in the speaking section. Now, this style isn't new. It's been introduced over the past few years. However, it's not reflected in a lot of popular textbooks or on TOEFL websites. Indeed, the official guide to the TOEFL doesn't mention the advantage, disadvantages style independent speaking question. So do be aware that they exist and check out my guide to this question style, which I will link to below. Now, I do want to talk about how they are maybe getting a little bit more difficult than in the past. So here's a sample advantages, disadvantages question. It goes like this. Some teachers prefer announcing their quizzes in advance, while others prefer to give surprise quizzes. Talk about the advantages and disadvantages of surprise quizzes. Use details and examples in your answer. So what makes this one a little bit more tricky than usual? Well, notice that it's giving you 2 options, right? It gives you the option of announcing quizzes in advance, and then it gives you the option of surprise quizzes. And then finally, it asks you to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of only surprise quizzes. Note the phrasing there. That's a little bit trickier than before because in the past, they might have only asked you to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of one thing that was stated, like the only thing that was stated. So the question might have said, some teachers like to give students surprise quizzes. talk about the advantages and disadvantages of surprise quizzes. So you can see that the phrasing is a little bit trickier than before. Now, the way to answer the question hasn't changed. You're using the same techniques and patterns, but the question is a little bit more difficult than before. So be aware of that. Finally, it now seems possible to get 25 points in the speaking section. In the past, that was mathematically impossible. You got 24 or you got 26. You never got 25. But in the last year, I've been getting a lot of reports from students where they're getting 25 points. I don't know how that's possible. Math is too hard for my simple brain. However, it is now possible. There's probably a change in the way they assess the speaking responses, but I've got no information about what that change actually entails. I should probably mention that in the past, it was also impossible to get 21, 16, or 12 points. My guess is now you can probably get those as well, but I don't have any score reports to back that up. That's a nice change, I think. I think that might make your job a little bit easier. If you've got a target score of 25, it might be easier to hit that than 26. Let's talk now about the writing section. Now, the independent writing questions are also getting longer and I think more confusing. Here's one. Often we are required to participate in group projects at school or work. Sometimes we must work with people who share our opinions and ideas. However, sometimes we must work with people who have completely different opinions than us. Which do you prefer? Use reasons and examples to support your answer. Do not use memorized examples. So this is the same preference style question as before, right? You get two choices and you have to state which you prefer. But note that the question itself is like a little paragraph. It is longer. It's got 3 full sentences, and they are fairly long sentences. In the past, this would have been 2 shorter sentences. Again, you're answering the question in the exact same way with the exact same structure as before, but you've got to do a lot more reading as you begin. And I think, this becomes a little bit more difficult because, the clock is actually ticking as you read the question. So you're going to lose a few seconds at the beginning, just reading this really long question. Here's another one. This is a 3 choices style prompt. We all face challenges in our lives. When you are dealing with a serious problem in your life, what do you feel is the best way to handle it? And then you've got 3 long choices. In the past, you'd have 3 choices, but you'd be getting 1 or 2 words in each choice. Maybe 3 words at the most. Now you're getting much longer choices. That makes the writing task a little bit more challenging. You're probably going to spend a whole minute, maybe 90 seconds, just reading the question before you start writing. So all I want to say is don't get scared or nervous if you get a really long question that's so much longer than what you've seen in your textbooks or in the official guide to the TOEFL. That's normal now. It changes nothing in terms of how you answer the question. Just be prepared. Now, here's something that I didn't mention in the previous video that everyone has been emailing me about. Now, the independent writing question ends with this warning: do not use memorized examples. Everybody wants to know what that means. It changes nothing. It means nothing. It's still okay to use personal examples. You can still use personal examples. This warning is telling you simply don't memorize an entire example in advance and use it no matter what the question prompt is. Now you might be thinking, well, that's crazy. Who would do that? Well, a lot of students, if they have a low level of English, their strategy is to memorize the entire essay body in advance, even before they see the question. And then what they do is they try to modify those personal examples a little bit in order to match the specific question they've been given. That's what ETS doesn't want you to do. It's a dumb idea, and it's going to cost you a lot of points. So trust me, it's still okay to use personal examples. Furthermore, some people ask me, teacher, is this telling me not to use templates? No, it's still okay to use a template. Don't worry about this warning. If you've been following my advice all along, this warning changes nothing. All right. Now we've got that out of the way. Again, remember, the 30-minute timer starts counting down as soon as the writing prompt is on the screen. That's, just something to keep in mind. I've already mentioned it, so I'll leave it at that. Anyways, for more of this stuff, please visit me at TOEFLresources.com. If you have any questions, if you've seen some other changes to the test in recent months, leave a comment down below and I will respond to it as soon as I can. All right, gonna leave it at that, but thanks for listening, guys.